In the world of tech, there are updates, and then there are revolutions. And back in November 2005, Microsoft pretty much dropped a bomb on the database world. It was called SQL Server 2005. And this thing wasn't just another version number. It was a complete reimagining of what a database could be, and it basically set the stage for the next decade of data.
And hey, when I say revolution, I really mean it. The people who were in the trenches using the software every single day called it a massive leap forward. We're not talking about a few minor tweaks here. This was a fundamental shift. It changed the entire game for everyone who worked with data. Microsoft was making a statement, a big one. So, what was all the hype about? What exactly made this release so groundbreaking? Well, to really get to the heart of it, we need to look at three main things where SQL Server 2005 just completely rewrote the rules: its core engine, its new all-in-one toolbox, and the fact that it was finally ready for the big leagues. Okay, first up, let's talk about the developers, because for them, this was absolutely a revolution. Imagine giving a database a brand new brain, one that couldn't just store data, but could actually think and run complex logic right inside its own engine. Well, that's pretty much what SQL Server 2005 did. Before 2005, if you were a developer, you were basically handcuffed to one language for database logic, T-SQL. But with this release, Microsoft did something pretty radical. They took their .NET framework, the CLR, and embedded it right inside the database engine. Suddenly, developers could use powerful mainstream languages like C# and VB.NET to write code that ran inside the database. This was huge. It meant more sophisticated logic, better performance, and a really seamless bridge between an application and its data.
But the engine upgrades didn't stop there. Oh no, this was a massive overhaul. All of a sudden, you could handle XML data, which was everywhere back then, like it was a native part of the database. You could get real-time health checks on your server with something new called dynamic management views, which was like putting a heart monitor on your system. You could build more reliable apps with a new service broker. And to top it all off, Microsoft gave everyone a brand new command center to run the whole show, SQL Server Management Studio.
So the engine itself was now an absolute beast. But Microsoft's vision was even bigger than that. See, they weren't just building a better, faster database. They were building an all-in-one data toolbox, a single product designed to manage the entire journey of your information, from start to finish.
And this is where things get really, really interesting. For the first time ever, a complete business intelligence suite was just baked right into the product. It wasn't some expensive add-on. You got SSIS for wrangling all your messy data. You got SSRS for creating amazing reports. And you got SSAS for doing that deep dive analysis. These three powerhouses, integration, reporting, and analysis, were no longer separate things you had to stitch together. They were a unified force right in the box.
So with this powerful new engine and a full BI stack, SQL Server was already looking incredibly impressive. But to truly compete in the big leagues against the giants like Oracle, it had to be more than just feature-rich. It had to be rock-solid, secure, and massively scalable. And that's exactly where Microsoft put their focus next. 64. That number might not seem like a big deal today, but in 2005, it was a seismic shift. We're talking about full 64-bit support. This meant SQL Server could finally shatter the memory limits of the old 32-bit world. It could handle truly massive databases and just insane workloads. This was the key that unlocked the door to the high-end enterprise. And the enterprise-grade features just kept coming. You needed to lock down sensitive data, now you had native encryption built right in. Worried about who could touch what? Schema separation gave you much tighter control. Struggling with performance on gigantic tables? Table partitioning was the answer, letting you manage them in smaller, faster chunks. And for those super high-traffic systems, a new feature called snapshot isolation was an absolute lifesaver, practically wiping out the frustrating bottlenecks that used to plague busy apps. So when you just take a step back and look at the whole picture, the supercharged engine, the integrated BI tools, the enterprise-grade security and scalability, you start to realize this wasn't just another update. This was the birth of a whole new identity for SQL Server. And that right there brings us to the absolute core of it all. The single most important takeaway from this entire story. SQL Server 2005 was no longer just a database. It had become a platform. So what does that even mean, a platform? It means that everything you could possibly need to work with data, storage, analysis, reporting, integration, it was all in one box now,
all designed to work together perfectly from day one. This was a completely new way of looking at it, and it changed the entire conversation in the industry. The story of SQL Server 2005 is such a powerful reminder of how a piece of technology can be totally reimagined. And it leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about, right? When the fundamental tools we use to understand our world change so dramatically, what new possibilities open up for all of us? That's the real, lasting legacy of a landmark release like this.